event with Tiziana Life Sciences, which trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker TLSA. With us today, we have Tiziana's Chief Executive Officer, Kunwar Shulubai.
Recording in progress.
We will begin with a brief presentation in a moment, and then we'll open the event for Q&A thereafter. We ask everyone, please keep your lines muted during the presentation. When the Q&A begins, please only unmute if you have a question. Now, before we begin, I need to read the Safe Harbor Statement. This call may contain forward-looking statements with meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1965. All statements pertaining to future financial and/or operating results, along with other statements about the future expectations, beliefs, goals, plans, or prospects expressed by management constitute forward-looking statements. Any statements that are not historical facts should also be considered forward-looking statements. And of course, forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties. With that said, I would like to now turn the call over to Kunwar. Please go ahead. Kunwar will be joining us in just a moment. There you are. Kunwar, we've read the Safe Harbor Statement, and the floor is yours.
Now? Hello?
Yes, Kunwar, this is Dean. Yes, we're good to go. We have you on mute, we have you on camera, so we've read the Safe Harbor Statements, and we're prepared for you to begin.
Okay, Andy, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let me know when to start.
Start now.
Hello, everybody. This is Kunwar Shulubai. I go by Shalu. I'm CEO and CSO of Tiziana Life Sciences. I'm very excited and pleased to tell you that this morning we started a trial in secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. This is the first ever trial with nasal administration of faralumab, a totally new approach for treatment of multiple sclerosis. And we are very excited about it. Purpose of this meeting is just to discuss with you all about this trial. But before I start discussing the trial, I would like to thank a few people. Among them, our top is Professor Howard Weiner and Professor Tanuja Chitnis, who are at Harvard Medical School. They, along with my clinical team, were able to start this trial, even though there have been a lot of delays and disruptions due to this COVID-19 pandemic. But finally, we were able to start this trial, and I'm very, very happy about it. So let me just share my screen. So as I said, that this trial is in secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. From now onwards, I'll call it SPMS. And this is part of an individual patient expanded access program. So let me take you to slide number 3. And purpose of this webinar is just to give you more update on our nasal administration program for treatment of multiple sclerosis. And so slide number 4. As you know that at Tiziana Life Sciences, we are trying to evaluate administration of antibodies through different routes of administration, oral, nasal, and subcutaneous. And this trial is with nasal administration. I must emphasize here that we are the first one to try nasal administration with an antibody. And previously, we had conducted few trials. We've been very successful, and I'll discuss with you on that as well. But let me first give you or introduce you to Foralumab. It is a fully human anti-CD3 monoclonal antibodies. This antibody is unique. I'm on slide number 6. This antibody is unique because it is the only fully human anti-CD3 antibodies. As you know, anti-CD3 antibodies have been in clinical studies. And famous example is OKT3, which was developed by J&J and it was approved by FDA. But the drug was taken off the market because being a murine anti-CD3 antibody, it produced severe immune reaction. Ours is the only fully human anti-CD3 antibodies. It is similar to OKT3, but it does not have the side effects of immune reaction. So this is unique antibody. We are developing this antibody through oral and nasal and subcutaneous administration. Nasal administration itself, I'm on slide number 7, is very important because it is the antibody is delivered through nostrils and it goes directly to the brain. And there is no issue of blood-brain barrier. So therefore, a small dose of this antibody could produce the clinical responses that we desire. So let me show you some data, animal data, whether this alternative route of administration works or not. And it is on slide number 8. This series of animal studies were done by Professor Howard Weiner. And these data clearly show that antibody can be delivered through nostrils and they provide the clinical benefit. Based on this preclinical data, we started a trial in Brazil, and I'm on slide number 9. And very quickly, I'll tell you that trial was the first ever validation that antibodies can be administered through nostril or through nose, and they provide, they are not only safe, but also provide significant clinical benefit. The slide number 9 shows the data, and as you can see, that when Foralumab was administered, 80% of patients showed improvement, and that improvement was strongly supported by reduction of IL-6 and C-reactive protein. IL-6 and C-reactive proteins are inflammatory biomarkers, which were reduced significantly following treatment with Foralumab. With this successful clinical study, we went ahead for development of this antibody for multiple sclerosis. And as we had reported earlier, that we are trying to initiate a phase 2 program in secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. The issue here, main issue here is that for treatment of progressive multiple sclerosis, you need long-term treatment. And for long-term treatment with nasal administration of Foralumab, we needed to have significant data showing the long-term safety and tolerability of Foralumab when given through nasal administration. So we've been in touch with FDA, and with their recommendation, we started this trial this morning. And this trial is part of an individual patient expanded program. In this trial, one patient was dosed yesterday, and this patient would be dosed for 6 months to examine long-term safety, tolerability, and clinical responses. And if treatment is safe, then the additional patients may be added. This is very important trial for us because as the positive outcome from this trial will help us move forward with the phase 2 clinical study. The scientific rationale or strategy underlying this trial is based on the successful completion of the trial in COVID-19 patient, which was also with nasal administration of foralumab. And data clearly showed that nasally administered foralumab is safe and it works very well. With that, I'll open this webinar for question and answer. Hello?
Thank you, Shalu. We're now going to open a call for questions. If you have a question, you can unmute your line by pressing **. And please start by stating your name. And if you're not asking a question, we ask again that you please keep your line and your Zoom muted. So let's go ahead with the first question. Abbas, you have your hand raised. Abbas Sharif, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good evening to you. My name is Abbas Sharif. I've got a couple of questions. One is, like you said, congratulations on the good data we had from Brazil on COVID-19. If it was obviously safe and well tolerated, what's taking so long for us to do the next bigger trial? And my other question is, I've asked you this before, but just because I'm very like this company and I'm very enthusiastic about it, I really want to know that at least tell the investors what's going on with Accustem Science. I know it's been spun off, but we would just like to know because there's a lot of confusion about it's either been listed on London and NASDAQ. Now we think it's just NASDAQ. We haven't even received the shares. We would just like to know what's going on and we will understand. Just talk to us and just tell us what's going on so we know where we are. Thank you.
Hi, Abbas. I think we had communicated before as well. Thank you for excellent questions. Let me first address your first questions regarding the trial in multiple sclerosis. You're correct that why there was a delay in starting this trial. So as you understand, this is the first ever trial with nasal administration of foralumab in multiple sclerosis. And FDA was quite sensitive about safety of people. Therefore, a lot of processes went by. The main objective of this trial is to demonstrate long-term safety of nasally administered foralumab. And for this purpose, our approach is two-pronged. Number one is to get as much clinical data from this clinical study that we started today. It is an individual patient expanded access program. And number two, while we are doing this study, also get additional animal data for safety and tolerability of nasally administered foralumab from 3 to 6 months. These two studies are very important. I'm sure, Abbas, you understand that we are not living in normal times right now, and COVID-19 pandemic has slowed down the process and responses from regulatory agencies, as well as the manufacturing of clinical supply. But still, I'm so pleased and so thankful to my team and team at Harvard Medical School to be able to initiate this trial. Regarding your second question on Accustem, I must tell you that I'm as unhappy or frustrated as investors are, but Accustem is not a part of Tiziana Life Sciences. It was spun out, and the management of Accustem is done by a separate team of management. Therefore, I do not have more information to give you update on as to when that will happen.
Thank you very much for that question. Michael Samuels, you have your hand up. Would you please go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, going back to that last question, I don't understand if it was spun off, don't we still own the company? Or, the other thing too is way back in September, you had mentioned about going ex-dividend. The company never went ex-dividend, the shares. So I'm a little in the clouds about you're saying it was already spun off, but if it was spun off, wouldn't we have gotten it already? You're saying there's different management. It's not up to that management, is it, to disperse the shares?
So, Mr. Samuel, yes, the company is spun out, and each shareholder of Tiziana Life Sciences will get 1 share of AccuStem. The AccuStem management team is trying to find a way to list it directly in London or NASDAQ, and that regulatory process is probably taking more time. Unfortunately, I do not have much more details on that.
Well, but my question is, if you're saying it was spun out, who owns the shares right now? Doesn't Tasmanian own the shares?
When the process is completed, all Tiziana shareholders will own AccuStem as well.
No, but presently, who owns AccuStem?
It is AccuStem company as such. The company is independent from Tiziana Life Sciences. It would be listed. The process of listing is taking more time, and I don't have more update on that.
Thank you for that question. Shakar has a question. I'll read that question. The question is, how was the nasal dose chosen?
Very good question. Excellent question. We conducted phase 1 clinical trial with in healthy volunteers. And in that trial, we use 10, 50, and 250 microgram dosing with nasal foralumab. We showed and publicly reported that doses up to 250 micrograms were completely safe, and there were no severe adverse events. Since then, we've been looking at the biomarkers of immunomodulation and anti-inflammation. And we will update investors pretty soon about that data. Based on that data, we thought 50 microgram would be optimal dose. And the dose range could be between 50 microgram and 150 micrograms. So based on that, we did additional trial in Brazil at 100 microgram per day dosing for 10 consecutive days. And that also we reported publicly. As you can see in the press release on COVID-19 trial in Brazil, that at 100 microgram, 80% of patients showed very rapid improvement in lung inflammation, as well as reduction in blood levels of IL-6 and CRP. IL-6 and CRP are very important biomarkers for inflammation. So this trial showed that 100 micrograms was this effect. And based on all of these clinical data, we chose this 50 microgram. Again, 50 microgram is lower dose, but 50 microgram showed significant clinical.
Sending him 2 questions.
Okay.
All right.
Very good. Thank you for that question. Sam Schwartz has a question. One is, has the SEC approved the distribution? And I think Sam has his mic, so he can follow that up with his second question.
And my second question is, can you reach out to NASDAQ as to the status of the pending listing?
Of AccuStem? Hello?
Sam, yeah, I believe he's asking, you're referring to AccuStem in the listing. Is that right?
I'm referring to the stock listing, which he says has already been distributed, but not to the existing TLSA shareholders. Am I understanding my question?
No. So if I understand your question, you're asking about the AccuStem listing on NASDAQ, and can we call them to find out as to when that would happen?
Yeah.
Good. So as I said before, yes, the management team at AccuStem is following up with the regulatory agencies, and they will provide an update as soon as possible. I am CEO of Tiziana Life Sciences, and unfortunately, I do not have the details on that.
Mm.
Very good. Thank you for that question. Thomas has a question. I can read that, Thomas, and that is, who is the management at AccuStem?
Actually, thanks, I'm online. I can ask the question. I appreciate you saying you're Tiziana, but on the company's house, you, alongside the current Tiziana management, are the sole directors of AccuStem. So I'm a bit confused why you suggest there's other management.
Yes, so I am on board of directors of AccuStem, but I am not in the management of AccuStem. And as you can understand, my hands are full with Tiziana Life Sciences, and there would be separate management team for AccuStem, and that process is still ongoing, and the management team of AccuStem will update you on that further.
Thank you very much. I have a question, a written question.
Can I please follow up on this briefly?
Sure, please, briefly.
Thank you very much. Who is the management? Can you tell us who the management is? I can't see an appointment of management.
Gabriel Cerrone is the
AccuStem.
management. Gabriel Cerrone is the management.
Yeah, so, and then he should know, right? Or he should, like, why don't we understand he is on Tiziana as well? And I'm sure he's got his hands full as well, but why can't we get an update? Because clearly the directors right now are the same.
You're right. Currently, the directors are same, but as the company moves on to get listed on publicly, there would be separate team of management. I don't have much details on that, and there may be additional board of directors for that company.
Very good. Thank you, Thomas. We have a question from Plan to Retire Early. How long will before we can get the initial CT scan results for the MS nasal Formulab trial?
Excellent question. And so, this expanded program, this is based on recommendation from the FDA. In this trial, our main objective is to demonstrate long-term safety of nasally administered Forolumab. And for getting the clinical response as per to assess the clinical effects on neurological behavior, it takes about 3 to 4 months minimum, but appropriate timing would be 6 months of continuous dosing to be able to see conclusive response.
Thank you. And there's a follow-up from the same gentleman. Are there any additional patents that are in progress and waiting for completion?
Yes, we do have patents on alternative routes of administration of Forolumab. We also have in license the patent estate from Harvard University, and Professor Howard Weiner is the inventor on that.
Very good. We have another written question, and that is, how or why is Formulab plus DEXA less effective than Formulab alone? And when do we get the extra data or the next data set? You suggested more data in a few weeks. When do you expect that to be available?
This is very excellent question, and I must tell you that I was also quite not sure why that happened. But let me first tell you why dexamethasone was chosen. So when we started enrolling, started the trial in Brazil, we found out that most of the patients were already taking dexamethasone. So therefore, we kept dexamethasone priming only for 3 days. That's what was allowed by the regulatory agencies. So dexamethasone was given only 3 days. And then we also kept a cohort, which was foralumab alone, to be able to distinguish if foralumab alone had any positive clinical response. And as you can see clearly, as far as lung inflammation is concerned, foralumab did the best. But other data also showed that foralumab plus dexamethasone were equally good.
Very good. Thank you for that question. And John Lauren has a question. Go ahead, John. And
yeah. Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. I've read that foralumab will be administered in 3-week cycles, 2 weeks on and 1 week off. And you've mentioned in an earlier question, or you gave a previous answer, that could be 3 to 4 months and up to 6 months for the scientific data to come through. But for that patient, the brave patient that's taken this one on, when might they see a noticeable difference in their condition?
The way, and this is again, we've been in touch with FDA, and as per their recommendation, so this patient will be given 3 times a week for first 2 weeks, and if the treatment is safe, then the next cycle will start. So each cycle is 3 weeks, and the treatment will continue for 6 months. I must tell you this, that being the first with nasal administration of foralumab for SPMS treatment, the burden is on us to show that the long-term treatment is safe. And that is what we are trying to do. And what we believe, and what we had already shown in Brazil trial, that once a day dosing for 10 consecutive days, the treatment is safe. However, for treatment of SPMS, we need 6 months of treatment. Therefore, this trial will help us demonstrate the safety and tolerability of nasally administered foralumab for long-term treatment.
excellent. Thank you for that question. I have another written question. What are the short-term catalysts in the next 6 months?
This SPMS trial that we started, that will continue, and we will provide timely updates to investors following completion of 1 month of trial, if the treatment is safe, and if the trial continues for additional months. That would be one update. We are also starting the phase 2 program with oral administration of foralumab in Crohn's disease, and that should start in the next few weeks. In addition to these two, we already reported publicly that we are developing another antibody, which is anti-IL-6 antibody. That antibody is unique. And as we reported previously, that currently that antibody is under GMP manufacturing and animal toxicity. As soon as that is accomplished, we will submit an IND. I expect the IND submission for anti-IL-6 would be sometime later this year. Also keep in mind that GMP manufacturing and other animal studies are delayed beyond our control because of this COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, we reported publicly a couple of weeks ago that we executed collaboration with the Japanese company to further take milchiclib in treatment of hepatocellular carcinoma. And the strategy underlying that collaboration is that the market for hepatocellular carcinoma is huge in Asian countries, whereas in US, the market is small. And so therefore, it would be prudent for us to do this next trial in Asian countries. And as you know, it's very important for the success of the program that we join hands with a local company in Asian countries. And hopefully we will identify a company to start trial in Japan or other Asian countries, and we'll update investors on that.
Thank you very good for that. Thank you very much for that answer. I have a question. What are you most excited about in the current pipeline?
I'm very, very excited about foralumab treatment with nasal administration and oral administration. And part of the reason is that traditionally antibodies have been administered through intravenous. And intravenous administration of antibody is, first of all, very costly affair. Patient compliance is very poor. And it is also well known that when antibodies are given through injection or infusion, the drug level in blood is very high for first few hours, and that produces significant toxicity. What we believe is that antibodies can be given orally and nasally, and the scientific rationale underlying nasal or oral comes from a very natural phenomenon. That is, that when a child is born, child receives immunity through mother's milk. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. So I believe, say for example, Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease is inflammation in your gut. Therefore, if you give antibody through oral administration, the drug just travels down the gut and provide local anti-inflammatory effect. And this is very innovative, highly exciting approach. And I believe personally that that has good chances of success. With nasal administration, it is unique. And as you know, for most of neurodegenerative diseases, drugs do not work properly or fail because they do not have or they do not cross through the blood-brain barrier when given orally or intravenously. In nasal administration, the antibody is given through nose, and antibodies accumulate in cervical lymph node, and that is where the drug stimulates nasal mucosal immunity, and as a consequence, there is a stimulation of T regulatory cells. Tregs are body defenders, and they are completely depleted in diseases like Alzheimer, Parkinson, multiple sclerosis, and ALS. So our approach is to upregulate Tregs and let Tregs fight with the disease. So these are highly innovative approaches, and these are also based on our physiology. So I think we, personally, I believe these two programs have very high chances of success.
Thank you very much, Shalu. Shalu, I'd like to wrap up. We have a highly attended meeting today, and it's just not enough time to get to everybody's questions. So what I'd like to do, Shalu, is leave a closing statement for you and a closing argument, if you will, why investors should position with Tiziana Life Sciences. And then I'll leave some information for those of you who still need some following Shalu's closing statement, if you will, in terms of how you can find out additional information.
Thank you, everybody. First of all, I'm so thankful for very important questions, and those are highly relevant questions as far as Tiziana Life Sciences is concerned. Why should you be interested in continuously supporting Tiziana Life Sciences? I can just tell you very simple that immunotherapy market is rapidly growing. Currently, it is $125 billion annual revenue. Immunotherapy is currently done with intravenous administration, and now people have started with subcutaneous. However, patient compliance is very poor because it's very, very expensive. And because of high level of high blood level of drug in first few hours after the injection or infusion, there are severe toxicities. But we believe that with oral and with the nasal administration of foralumab, we may be able to reduce toxicity, and we may be able to produce we may be able to deliver antibody in such a way that it can have local effect. If we succeed in any one of these, then Tiziana Life Sciences would could revolutionize the way immunotherapies are done. We have already shown in the trial and publicly reported that the nasal administration of foralumab, 100 microgram, very small dose, for 10 consecutive days provides significant clinical response. And that is first ever validation of validation that antibodies can be administered nasally, and not only they are safe, but they also provide the clinical response. Same way, I feel that oral administration of foralumab could be very good, could provide clinical responses in treatment of Crohn's disease. If any of these two programs succeed, Tiziana Life Sciences would be highly successful. Thank you for support.
Thank you, Shalu, and thank you everybody for attending the meeting. And we really appreciate your being here. If you have any additional questions regarding Tiziana Life Sciences, you can go to TLSAinfo.com, or you can also call the RedChip account manager for Tiziana Life Sciences, Craig Brailsford. His number is 1-407-571-0902. So that's TLSAinfo.com, or call Craig here at RedChip. I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and we hope you have a great evening.